Welcome to Forest Chat, where we talk about individual endeavour in Western Australia, what it takes, what it means, and how you do it. I'm your host, Paul Vandermeer, and in today's episode, we're talking with Gabrielle Walker about being a healing arts practitioner. Gabrielle started as a healing arts practitioner around 10 years ago and has added modalities in the time that she's been practicing. Welcome to Forest Chat, Gabrielle.
Oh, thank you for having me, Paul. It's really nice to be here.
Great to have you on the show, Gabrielle. Gabrielle, what is a healing arts practitioner?
It's a term that I like using to encompass the modalities that I do. So I do romi and mirimiri, which are Māori healing modalities, and they are Indigenous from Aotearoa, New Zealand. And then I became a counsellor around COVID time when we weren't able to be in people's presence. So I was able to do that more online. At the time, I thought it would be a bit more like a PD or a personal development undertaking, and I ended up falling in love with it. And for me, it's that interest in humanity, human beings, us becoming better people, but also healing from traumatic things if we've gone through them and acknowledging all parts of ourselves. So the beautiful thing about Māori healing is that we look at spirit, life force, our accomplishments, calling things in, and then also acknowledging some of the more horrible things that we've gone through and working out how our life wants to be. And it's done somatically through the body. So romi is quite a deep pressure body work. So we use all different parts of our body. We can use elbows, hands, our feet, and then also it can look a little bit like massage in a Western sense, although some Māori people in New Zealand don't like it being described that way because it is more of an energetic practice in a way. And then counselling or therapy as we know it is more of a talk therapy, and that is listening to how people want to be moving through in their life. Sometimes it can be temporary things, people going through something in a short-term moment, but then it can be an ongoing thing that moves in that way. And I'm also trained as a coach, so I can't take that part of my brain off, that life coach part where you're looking towards the future while also sometimes unpacking some of the things that we put away in the suitcase at younger parts of our life. And for me, that sitting in presence, that knowing about humanity, the working out how to see all parts of ourselves is what a healing arts practitioner is.
Right, so it's pretty encompassing by the sound of that. There's like physical aspects and there's also energetic aspects to it.
Yeah, so the practice was actually in New Zealand was banned until the 70s, and most Māori practice. So I'm Māori, my dad's Māori, and my mum's non-Māori, she's English. I'm from New Zealand originally. I've lived in WA since 2007. Culturally, we will tend to look at things through spirit, life force, physical. So the practice is very much encompassing of that. It also includes karakia, which is like saying chants or prayers over a body. There's pieces of, have you heard of the body keeps the score?
Yes, absolutely, I have, yes.
Yeah, so it's similar about Peter Levine. That it's similar to that concept of our body will hold memories or hold different pieces or things. Through our practice, we also consider that we have things that are ancestral pieces stored within our body or within our system that can be cleared or moved or shifted or acknowledged that may not have been able to have been acknowledged or dealt with in previous generations just because of the life circumstances that they're in at that time. Whereas in this current day, we've got often have that beautiful aspect of being able to access all these different modalities and sometimes space to be able to change the way we're thinking about some of those things.
There's a couple of interesting things that you've said there. One about it being banned until the 1970s.
Yeah, I can't remember the exact date, but so there was an act called the Tohunga Suppression Act, and Tohunga, the translation now is more of a master of whatever you're doing. So you could be a tohunga of woodwork, or you could be a tohunga of healing. But at the time, in the act or the things I've read about it, it was referred to as a witch doctor or things like this. And then there was a really interesting quote which I read in one article which said, we can't even believe it. Not only are Māori going to receive this healing, but white people are believing in it too. And that was something said in Parliament. And so, yeah, it went underground a lot at that time. And different tribes or iwi were practicing underground or through different ways. And then a lot of my teaching, so I learned the miribiri aspect from my family line, from my nea and Kimi Rangihoia, and then Papa Hohepa Dalamia, he taught more the romiromi side, which is where I learned from other teachers, and he reinvigorated it throughout the world. So initially in New Zealand, people weren't so open to learning about it. And so he actually went to the States and Europe and taught there. And then so there's some practitioners there as well. And then recently it's become recognised in New Zealand through ACC, which is like Medicare here. And yeah, so it's really cool. It's had this huge shift from being banned to being able to be recognised through Medicare, essentially. So that shift in what is that, 30 years or no, we're not in 2000 now. However many years.
So 50 odd years, yeah.
50 years, thank you for the math. The skill thing, the maths is not my skill set.
We all have different strengths. We need to play to our strengths.
Yeah, so I can't remember the exact date it became that you were able to practice, but he was one of the first people to be public and sharing it. And then, so I'm the next generation, and the students who are learning from me are the next generation. So they're only that third generation of people who are sharing it publicly. So often I've found this myself, but students will also be expressing like this fear to step out or be seen to do it. And for me, I believe it's part of that legacy of it having been banned, and we're literally coming out of the shadows to practice it again.
Such a good thing that a healing modality comes out of the shadows. We have been dragged into believing that you just take something and everything will be fine, but it's really not the full solution.
Yeah, definitely. And even through the worldview perspective of thinking, it can change your mind. You feel, if I think about the energy of how I see it on someone's body when they're looking through the mind space or predominantly, I want to say Western, but it's not Western, it's more through the mind, that the energy doesn't have other places to express or flow, whether that be art or running or whatever these other aspects of us are. If we're thinking in a linear way all the time, there's so much more to us that sometimes a healing practice can address more than medication, or nothing against those, because there are times when we really truly need them, but sometimes they're not always the answer,
or they're not the full answer.
Yeah, like that. That's a good way to say it.
Yeah, very interesting, because that was, the fact that it was banned and coming back, that's pretty critical to what's going on. So with your healing arts practitioner world, you've got the Maori healing side and you've got the counselling side. Do they combine?
Yeah, so I do have clients who overlap. Counselling's a little more regulated in WA in terms of some of the processes of intake and permissions, but I get bodywork clients to sign the same intake forms as well. But for me, in terms of how I'm working, I tend to see that clients will typically lean towards one side of it or the other. They'll be wanting the counselling healing side, or they'll be wanting the bodywork side. So within counselling, the mātauranga or the way of thinking will be introduced, and then within the bodywork, I will sometimes spend more time talking if I think that that's appropriate, or the person will benefit from some of those counselling skills, although it won't be as in depth. I do offer, it's more of a life coach package. I trained as a life coach at the same time as I actually stepped into sharing the Māori healing, because I had all the people who I trained with were in New Zealand, so I had no model of how that would look in Australia, and I was like, okay, I'll do this life coach training. So at the time when I started, that was like 10 years ago or so, I started a package which still goes to today, which is one bodywork session, then one talk session, or vice versa, a talk session, then a bodywork session. And we'll work more in that coaching way of, okay, here's where we're moving towards, here's the goals. People will be wanting to publish a book and they've got insecurities, or they're not sure about it, or they will, I'm just thinking of some examples, they'll be wanting to create their own training. And we'll work through that both in the somatic way of what's the actual block, because often what people bring and they think are the challenges aren't always the challenges. There'll often be these other things underneath that draw on those skill sets. But as far as in my mind it sort of depends on how I contract people, and that there's as much clarity there as possible for them to know what they're stepping into. But yeah, I do overlap it. But yeah, the simple answer is it does overlap. I try to be clear about where that's sitting and what you're coming into, and then have a discussion if I think you'll fit into another stream in a better way.
Very much an individually based decision by the sound of that.
Yeah. I sort of put out all the offerings, and then people will self-select on how they want to come in. So with the body work, it'll typically, not always, some people come more regularly, monthly or fortnightly or weekly, and then other people just come for a one-off. Whereas counselling, it's normally recommended. You can't have a one-off if you're really, really like in a state, but counselling sort of, the energetics of it is that you have more sessions so that you can dig into things and go away and work on it. And so it's a little bit of a different, I guess, worldview of how you're approaching that. Even though for me internally, I grew up with a Māori father and a non-Māori mother. So I've always done that code shifting thing myself.
That gives you a great set of skills. So what does it take you, Gabrielle, to be a healing arts practitioner?
It's really interesting. I'd say it changes over the time. So 10 years in, I feel pretty confident in where I sit in terms of being a practitioner. But when I started, I was coming out of more of a corporate mindset in a corporate space, and it felt like I was dying, or like I was on show every time I stepped into like, here's what I want to offer. And I actually started doing business coaching because that felt safe. It was like, okay, I know these people, I know their language. And then to bring in any of that like more spiritual view or Māori view felt like, is that allowed? And can I do that? Whereas like now that's not even really going through my mind. Occasionally I'm like, okay, that person didn't vibe with that, but I'm not feeling in the same way of like uncertainty about my essence or my being, which I do remember at that time. I think running your own business it's really different than having a job. Or even doing any of your own endeavors, which is what a lot of people that you're talking to are doing. It's because when you have a role where you're on a wage and you go there and you sort of are doing someone else's, we say ori or their life force, you're giving to what they're doing. Whereas when it's yours, it can be a little bit more personal sometimes. If you do something wrong, if you make the wrong appointment or something's wrong in the email, it can feel like a personal thing. So sometimes that can be challenging on a level. I think as I've matured, I started my business when I was 27, so the energy of a 27-year-old is so different than a 40-year-old, which I am now. And that life shift of how, then I was just like, okay, go to the networking thing, let's go to meet these people, talk. And now that's like, oh, I don't really want to do that so much. So it's that how do I change the shift in thinking to still allow people to know about it without taking my life force in that active way as much. And then, so I feel like it's a lot of personal work. So there's the business side, there's a lot of personal work to own your own business, to be confident in that, to get out and do it. It's such a huge deal to do something on your own, emotionally, monetarily, and the effort of time, and sometimes you don't know where it's going, and you're sort of just chucking things at it and hoping it'll stick. So that's on the business side. And then as a practitioner, I would say there's also a lot of personal work. And I was thinking about it as I was walking my dog along the beach this morning around our chat today and what might come up. And I was thinking of how so there's such a diverse number of people you're meeting with such broad backgrounds. Sometimes people are having things that happen to them that are so horrific we wouldn't know that they were happening in our society if you live a certain way of life. So you're exposed to this really broad way of thinking, and it's not I don't know if I'd call it a mindfulness, but I really have to have this strong awareness of like what's mine and try to see the good in all people. I often think of clients like a coconut shell. There can be this hard shell on the outside, but once you get inside, there's this really yummy energy inside, or something that's delicious, and you're like, that's what you're about, and that's what's happening. So there's this, with the actual practice, there's this attentiveness to people to try and understand why they're actually there, because as I mentioned earlier, sometimes people don't know why. They're just like, I'm a bit stuck, but when they go to describe it, they might not know. And then there's also an attentiveness of like, can I actually provide what they're wanting? Am I the right fit there? So there's that piece, and then an acceptance of, oh my God, there's horrific things that have happened to this person, but that's not my life. There's this differentiation, which can be really hard when you're a person who cares a lot, to be able to hold your own energy and go, my life's actually okay. I can't believe this person's going through this, or that they went through this, and have that. So both a compassion, but also hold at my own life in a way where I'm not giving over of myself all the time. So I think that I like to call them love lines rather than boundaries, so I can move them depending on how well resourced I am in the time. But then I'll these strict things. But sometimes I'm like, oh, I'm a little bit close to like overwhelm, or I don't know if you've heard of that. You probably have with your wife and everything, but terms like vicarious trauma, or so when you're hearing a lot of stories that are traumatic that other people have gone to, it does enter your cells and your being. So sometimes I have to create those love lines a little bit closer, and then other times I'm like, oh, I've been going my beach walks, I've been going to yoga, I've been going to dance, I can move my love lines out a little bit more, I've got more to offer. So yeah, it's sort of that being attentive both to my life, to clients, and then learning not to take my business so seriously, but also doing the work it needs to give it its life force as well.
Yes, businesses definitely have their own life force.
Yeah. Do you find the same? That's what I was pinging in my brain when you were talking. I was like, oh, I wonder if you have those same quandaries.
Yeah, you explained very well how it comes together, or feels like it's not coming together, but sometimes things are happening and things either start or stop, and you don't always understand why.
Mm-hmm. And I think every single thing I've started has contributed to something in some way. It can be like, oh, it didn't come together exactly as I thought, but the graphics I developed for that actually then fit this, or these sorts of, it's not always working towards what I think it's working towards, or it takes way longer than I thought it would. In my head, I'm like, oh yeah, I'll be able to do that, by the end of the year. No.
There's a little bit of trusting what goes on. Sometimes you are led on a more circuitous path than direct, and some people love direct, and other people, direct is definitely not their thing, and they might be led directly to it, and it causes a disjoint between the two. I think, like a real tension is probably a good way to put it.
Yeah, so true. But having said that, when I first started my practice, I was in a mastermind with a bunch of people, and they went more on that direct path, and they scaled really quickly, and none of them have that business anymore, and I'm still existing. So they would, getting this, they did that. And I always had a more thing in my mind of like, I'm building a body of work. I'm on a slightly different path, but I still love being around those discussions and learning, because you're always like, oh, I never thought of that. Or even us being the descript rooms, I'm like, oh, how exciting. I hadn't even realized that's there. I'm always sort of taking those sorts of things in.
Descript is what we're recording in as a software as a service. And you've been using it for editing, is that right?
Yes. Yeah, I use it to edit.
Yeah. So I do as well, and then the recording is a separate functionality that you almost have to find.
Yeah, I did not know about it, and it was it's sort of interesting, I guess, for me that that random way of things happening is how I've learned that things evolve for me. So it was even a client of mine who had been listening to my podcast was like, you have to please look at the script, because she couldn't sort of like the audio. And then she actually created a Zoom for me to like walk me through how to use it. So
Nice.
yeah, I'm really grateful for the offerings people make where they're like, you could be doing this better, or there's a more efficient way, or because for me, I'm like, I want to be offering things, but I also know that some things are more of my, it's better use of my time to be actually having the conversations, not doing all the things. So yeah, it's sort of cool in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. I really enjoy that learning aspect, and I enjoy the catching up with people and talking about what they're up to as well. That's been a big part of my background, even back in the day when I was a sales rep. The most amazing thing was to drop into people's workplaces and say, oh, what do you need? and they'll take you around and show you the business. It was fantastic.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Gabrielle, you have mentioned trauma a number of times on the way through, and you mentioned the book, The Body Keeps the Score. My wife talks about the 7 generations of trauma.
Mhm.
It sounds like what you're talking about goes even further.
Yeah, so in Māori culture, we're often thinking about our ancestry, and when we think of ancestry, I guess is in the human realm, we're like, okay, grandparents, great grandparents, that 7 generations. But rumi, how we were taught is that you go to the origin of time. So either te toi maorangi or oranga takitaki, and then we bring that energy down through the clearing. So we're asking to go to a more renewed state. So sometimes the ancestral lines can be really, we don't even know the vibration of them. Then they're so unknown to us. We don't know the story, but the belief is that there's, well, and I believe this, but the belief of the practice also is that there is a clearing through that more than that 7 generations. And the origin story of the world in Māori culture, Rangi Nui and Papatuanuku is the Sky Father and the Earth's mother, and they were in the dark te kore, and there's different cycles of te kore, and their children decided they wanted to be in the light, so they actually separated them and severed them with a toki, and that was what created the world of light. So our world was actually created in the story through this separation or this violence, and then so we're trying to like go to before that and then bring that energy through to take away any violence, any things where we say that Papatunuku was one of the first solo mothers. So we're trying to like heal some of that energy as well. And I think, and one of the things I really like about our practice is that we try to balance and acknowledge the light and the dark. So rangioti ame te rangioti po, it's like looking at, yes, there's these things we prefer to be in light, and we prefer to be in joy, and we prefer to feel all those like vibrationally beautiful feelings, but then also there's very real yuck stuff that's happened in the world, and how do we like watch that, look at that, and acknowledge that as well. And I think that story or that origin, and then trying to find how we can look at those together, because one is like people that are trying to bypass sometimes or just always being good, and then nothing against beautiful people who are advocates or really fight for what's right, but getting stuck in that energy sometimes can be just a really heavy feeling. So how do we balance those two realities of what we want as human beings and sit more in that middle place? That's what I like about the practice and about that origin story as well.
That's a fascinating and structurally different way of looking at it compared to what I've grown up with as well. The automatic view is to look back through the generations, going through parents, grandparents, and yeah, looking at it from the other end, from the origin, and looking forwards and taking the good lessons from that's not something that I've considered.
Mm. Yeah, it's cool. Yeah, and so that's one of the classes that I teach as well, is like what those different energies are that were like pre-human, but they're like called marekura whatukura, which is like light beings. Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. And is it a significant proportion of the people coming to you with significant trauma?
The short answer is yes. I'm just trying to work out the best way to answer that. I would say that trauma is a hard thing to define, and if we've ignored things that have happened, so I'd say every single person has gone through things that are really challenging in life. And if you even listen to people who seem to have it all together, they've gone through some things that would be really, really shocking. And they are just living in a certain way. I would say, though, as in terms of who comes and sees me, it's a real broad range of people at different phases of their healing journey and how they're thinking about that. But yeah, some people have been through a lot of interference in different ways, whether that be physical, sexual, emotional, words said, and that's very common as well. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's definitely a big issue, and there's a need for healing in that space.
Yeah, yeah, and I do think that it's so beautiful that it's becoming a little more normalized in our culture now. But there does seem to be some things that require that somatic as well as the talk based for things to really land. Yeah, so it's depends on where you're at in your journey.
Trauma is not something you can just explain away.
We try.
Yeah, what I'm trying to say is that dealing with trauma is not a simple thing.
No, no. And there's so many layers, even if I've gone through certain things in my life. I'll just, I guess, use myself as an example. And I have a relatively grounded and safe and more of a secure type life now than I did in the past. But the stuff will still come up, or even if sometimes I can hear something that doesn't have an impact, and then another time I'm reacting. So we don't always know what's coming up or when it's coming up, or sometimes what our unconscious is tapping into it at different times. Or if we're more overwhelmed or tired, we might have less capacity to hold back or to regulate in the way we can when we're more well resourced. And sometimes I don't think that it's horrible when you're having a breakdown or when you're in that moment, but sometimes it's what your spirit needs in a way to be able to really make the changes that you've been wanting under the surface. And maybe if we're always regulated, we don't see what we're really wanting to do.
That's interesting. You sort of blindside yourself.
Yeah, yeah. I do it to myself as well sometimes. I'm like, oh, everything's great. And then I'm like, everything is not great. What's happening?
Gabrielle, what does it mean that you're able to be a healing arts practitioner? What does it mean to you, your family, or the community?
Interesting. Personally, it feels like it's, to use the word calling, we use the word oriori, which means your life's path or your life's vibration, your life's lullaby. But I do see it as a calling. I look at my life the whole way through, and I can see I was drawn to this sort of work throughout, even though I went on a range of different turnabouts and roundabouts and different studies. To my family, my actual family, my family of origin, that nuclear family, that has been a really beautiful healing thing, because this was in my lineage and there had been some disruptions to it. And it was always in my background, sort of like I knew I was called to do something with that. So that's been nourishing. But in my extended family, it's been quite disruptive in lots of ways in terms of how people view the practice and views about me being public with it. So that's at times been quite challenging. Some of the two most challenging things I've been through in terms of that experience. And then for the community, though, what I really love about being in WA and offering this is that there is quite a big Māori community here. Māori and non-Māori people come to this practice, but there is quite a big Māori community, and I feel so blessed to be able to offer rumi and mirimiri here. Counselling as well, because there is, as you're probably hearing throughout this, there is a certain worldview that it can be different than an Australian worldview, and sometimes it's nice to have someone who's like, yeah, I get that, that's a normal thing, or that happened, and not be shocked with some of the traumatic experiences that are also a part of our culture, as well as some beautiful parts. And so to the community, I really love that. We're actually doing a practitioners gathering in Bunbury this weekend. Which is people who have been training through Akutoro Whanui, which is the healing training that I offer. And there's so many practitioners down south that I'm heading down there for us to do a day gathering there. So it sort of has these ripples into WA, and in ways that I definitely did not realize when I started. And so I feel so honoured to witness people's journeys. I've had people share with me, it makes me want to cry actually, but like they're not that they're not suited for work, but single mamas who've done the training and then they're able to earn a little bit of extra money through offering from their own practice, or people's lives that have changed. I've had people say that they've been able to stop taking really hard drugs, or that through this engagement with the practice in a different way, or also achieve their dreams. And it's like to have been both witness to that with my own clients, but also then to know that there's now practitioners out there rippling that out. It honestly, yeah, I want to cry. It's so beautiful that exists in the community from a practice that, as we started in the beginning, it was banned 50 years ago.
That's incredible. And that's how good things spread, isn't it?
Mm, yeah. Yeah. So I'm just so proud of those who have stepped in and so grateful as well that some of the trainees have been such core and key pieces in making this possible for me in terms of the support that they've offered in so many different ways. And lots of the trainees like help me teach now and things like that. So it's been, yeah, it's a community practice and it's a community endeavor in lots of ways as well.
That's a beautiful thing to hear about.
Yeah, yeah, it's cool.
Now, when you were walking along the beach this morning and you were thinking of what might come up, what have we missed?
Oh, I think I was mostly thinking of that younger me and like how I've changed so much. That was what I was reflecting on about. Like when I was thinking of that question of what does it take, it was like, oh my gosh, she had no idea what she was up to. But it's not, and I feel as if I haven't had a choice in a way, but there are so many moments where you're going, yeah, I'm going to keep going when it has been hard or when my own stuff gets hit or, yeah. So that it was just that thought of, I had no idea what I was up to. I just started this thing. Yeah. And it's growing.
And in a beautiful way, which is wonderful.
Yeah. Thank you.
Gabrielle, if somebody else wanted to become a healing arts practitioner, and I guess your variant of that is your specific one, and other people may have variations to that because the healing arts practitioner is an umbrella, isn't it, really? So how would somebody, if they wanted to get on and become a healing arts practitioner, what would they need to do?
Well, yeah, like you say, there's different modalities. So there's loads of things you can look into that are healing based. So yeah, my podcast, I talk to different modalities and different counselors and approaches because I'm really interested in that. But the training that I run is called Ako Toro Whānui, which translates as holistic healing. And that's the Romi and the Miri Miri training. And that's on my website, turahanga.com.au. Maybe that'll be in the writing. It's a Māori word that means to have a different perspective. And it was also the name of my grandparents' farm. So it's got a personal connection for me. And that is on my website. There's details of that. We're running a 3-day retreat weekend and bailing up in August. And then the next intake of the Romi and Miri Miri is in October. So, yeah, that's in Bibra Lake in Perth.
Reasonably central, Bibra Lake's along the freeway and that sort of thing. So,
and they're me, so that's why I chose it. So I don't have to go too far.
Of course. Got to make sure that the key people are right there.
Yeah, and I always like having a little bit of nature. So we do some of the practice inside, and then if it's nice enough weather, we'll do some outside, so that we're getting that mixture of different types of learning. And there's lots of people come for their own personal development as well. So it'll be, they just know there's something because you're giving and receiving during the weekend. So they might just want to learn more about their Māori background, or they might just know there's something there for them. But yeah, the actual to be registered as a practitioner and receive the insurance, it takes 400 hours, which it encompasses the training, but also some practice at home and a few different practice with clients and things like that.
There is a formal course with an outcome that actually leads you to be able to get insurance and that sort of thing.
Yeah. It's registered with IICT, which is the International Institute for Complementary Therapists. But that's in Australia. So if you're somewhere else, so the program's actually registered for the insurance anywhere in the world. You do have to come be somewhere where I'm offering it to do it, but except for the States, because I've got different insurance rules. So yeah, it works that way. But yeah, so when I had actually, do you mind if I tell the story of what happened with the training starting?
Go for it.
I was practicing and just a solo practitioner. I didn't actually have plans to teach, and I was increasingly having clients of mine say they wanted to learn, and I was like, okay, thinking about it. So it was percolating in the background, and a client of mine actually got a grant for me to develop the training, and which is crazy cool, right? Like, so that thanks to her, Charlie, for getting there. And that's what made me step into training. And I had no idea at all what I was doing. And in my head, I was thinking more in that in that more academic-y way of studying, and I sort of set it up that way. So when I'm talking about it, it probably sounds like that, but it became very quickly apparent within the first sort of 10 minutes that that's not what we were there to do. There was so much emotion and other things happening. It's immediately that I was like, wow, this beautiful thing does fit in the balance of that, of where there's this pathway where you can learn, and we're fitting into that Western aspect of being able to become registered, but there's also a really deep cultural healing, personal healing happening as well. So yeah, it was a really cool thing, and I had no idea what I was doing when I first started. I literally tried to teach everyone everything I knew. And now that's developed into about 8 different modules. But by the time they got that all at once.
You got to get in there and do it. Doing it is most important. And then you work out how you might do it differently next time.
Yeah. Many of the people who did that first training still practice, and they said, they valued that so much because they did learn a lot, and often the people who go through earlier ones will come and support later. And so they're like, oh, wow, they didn't realize that they were being given so much all at once, but they say that they value that as well.
That's an element of when you're given a challenge and you actually get through it. Like there's great reward in that, isn't there?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, jumping off cliffs has certainly been a lot of how my life's progressed, and I just decided recently I don't want to jump off so many cliffs, but yeah, you are correct.
Every cliff you jump off is another way that you are encouraged and backed up in knowing what you're doing. Because you jumped off the cliff and you succeeded, you know you can do more.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah, and so you're literally finding your wings on the way down. You're like, okay. Oh.
That's really another way to look at it as well, isn't it? The learning to fly.
Yeah. And then I think my current that was my cliff I was jumping off, and then my current cliff is like, how does this thing exist without so much personal effort now, where other people are coming in to hold space? So Towns, for example, holding down in the southwest Bustleton area more so, and then just starting to have those satellite energies of where it's not all coming from me, but it's more of an organism that we can exist and support each other in different ways. That's my current personal challenge of how to configure that structurally.
And there are so many options to do that. Great to hear that it's spreading.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gabrielle, for being on Forest.chat, and all Forest.chat listeners wish you all the best with your future endeavours.
Thanks, Paul. Thank you for having me. That was fun.
Absolutely. You've been listening to Forest.chat, where we talk about individual endeavour in Western Australia, what it takes, what it means, and how you do it. I'm your host, Paul Vandermeer, and in today's episode we've been talking with Gabrielle Walker about being a healing arts practitioner. Remember, there are 4 ways to get involved with Forest.chat. Share the domain Forest.chat with your friends and family and people you meet. When you sign up for emails, you get advance notice of episodes. Listen to the episodes at forest.chat/episodes. If you do something interesting or that other people might find interesting, book an interview at forest.chat/interview. If you want to support a small business, book an advert at forest.chat/advert. I'm looking forward to joining you with our next guest. Until then, enjoy making it happen.